Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie. Welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway, where you'll learn the keys to building a profitable speaking business from speaking industry pros. Each week, we interview a great guest who will share his or her speaking journey, identify what their keys to success have been, and highlight some critical mistakes they've made along the way that you'll want to avoid. Be sure to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, sit back, tune in, and get ready to meet this week's guest.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show. I'm your host, Brett Ridgway, and I'm excited to have as my guest today, John Dwyer. Now, John's a marketing enigma, a direct response customer attraction expert who thinks way outside the box. His marketing consultancy business is called the Institute of Wow, and John's mantra is that one's marketing needs to wow prospects. He's also the guy who shocked the marketing world some years ago when he convinced Jerry Seinfeld to come out of retirement to be the spokesman for an Australian banking institution. John helps business owners understand how to exploit platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn by implementing incentive-based marketing offers that can be targeted specifically to certain audiences. His client list reads like a who's who of businesses and includes the likes of Rupert Murdoch's News Limited, 7-Eleven, Walt Disney, KFC, and BP, to name a few. Welcome, John Dwyer, to the Spotlight on Speaking show.
Thank you, Brett. Gee, I'll tell you what, that guy sounds pretty clever.
Man, it sounds like he's got a little bit going on there, certainly. So, and you're probably the first Australian I've actually interviewed for the show, and this will be episode number 126, John. So,
Wow.
We're looking for some brilliance from down under today that can help speakers on their path. But I want to talk first about your particular speaking journey. So you've been involved in the marketing world for a number of times. As we were talking before the show, we have some common people that we know from events over the years and all that stuff. So when did you first decide that you needed to add speaking to your marketing mix and get up in front of crowds to share your message, and then obviously hopefully land clients out of that particular exercise?
Brett, probably about 15 years ago, which was probably reasonably late in my career. But I found, as you would have, of course, and every speaker does, that the sell once to many formula just makes sense. Instead of doing a meeting across the desk with a prospect, it was just fantastic to sit in front of 50 or 150 people and be able to put your presentation to them that you would normally sell just one-on-one, but all of a sudden it becomes 1 in 100, or 1 to 100, or 1 to 150.
Now, you've done keynote speaking, obviously. You've done platform selling. So which of those worlds do you prefer to play in, and why?
I must say the platform selling is more lucrative. One might say that keynote speaking is lucrative, and I guess it is if you're, Barack Obama or you're Richard Branson, because they charge, a hefty fee to speak. But if you're a regular speaker, but you have good product, it just makes sense to do platform speaking. I'm on the various speaking agencies here in Australia. And if you get asked, to speak at an event and you are not a well-known celebrity, then Brett, you're probably going to walk away with a few $1,000s. And what I normally do is just say thanks, but I'll do it for free as long as I can do a soft pitch at the end of it. And you might end up walking away with 30 or 40 or 50 or $60,000 then, instead of what they offered, which might have been 5.
So what has worked best for you, John, in terms of landing speaking engagements? Is it networking? Is it being part of a speakers bureau? Is it cold calling, direct marketing, social media? What's worked for you to get gigs?
Look, the speakers bureau provides you with some speaking gigs, but not many. I mean, unless you're a television celebrity or you're a sporting star, then you don't get picked to, give a keynote too often to a big conference. And so therefore, what I have done over the years is networked with other speakers, not necessarily competitive speakers, because at the end of the day, if a marketing expert was asked me to speak on their stage, then that would be like Coke inviting Pepsi to speak on their stage. It just wouldn't make sense. But if they have an audience of business owners and they're teaching business owners how to budget, or maybe from a HR, human resources point of view, they're teaching them how to treat their staff, then their audience is the same as mine, and that is business owners, but they're selling a completely different product. So I'm not competitive. So that's what I do. I tend to have networks of business coaches or business consultants who have the same target audience that I have, but they don't sell the same services.
All right, so your consultancy is called the Institute of Wow. How do you wow your audiences quickly to get them fully engaged in a presentation that you're doing?
I wish I could say that I dance or I sing, but I can't do any of those things. Brett, look, because of the career that you've had, that the speaking circuit is full of show-offs. It's full of people who are very boastful. And sometimes they might stretch the truth a little bit about the mansion that they own in Europe and the yacht that they own and the fact that they're married to Miss World. I take the mickey out of that, to be honest with you, because I know the industry does, at least the selling from stage side of the industry, does have, a few fibs. I actually, get on stage and in the early part of the presentation, highlight to them, the audience that is, which are normally business owners, I just highlight to them that, I'm down to earth. I happen to have quite a few wins in terms of direct response marketing, attracting customers for businesses. And then I just say to them, can I ask everyone in the room who at this very moment is doing marketing that's not price discounting? In other words, who in the room owns a business or runs a business and you are offering your products or services, but you are not focusing on price? You're focusing on some sort of incentive, or you're giving, more value than your competitor. And you know what? Nobody puts their hand up. 99.9% of business owners are selling their products on price.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about speakers and price. So let me preface this first by asking, obviously COVID changed the speaking world immensely. Have live events started to come back yet in Australia?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. I don't know whether it's at the level pre-COVID, but I would suspect it is. And I think it's come back, not only because it just had to, because obviously people were sick of sitting at home, but I think it's come back because there's no question that if you are selling from stage, and keep in mind that's most of the speaking engagements I have is selling from stage. I mean, you give lots of value, as you know, you've got to give lots and lots and lots of free value. But at the end of the presentation, if somebody feels that there's an alignment with what you're offering, then they might join your program or buy your product. Selling from stage is always going to beat selling on Zoom. There's just no question, because you've got that personal interaction, and it's just the atmosphere itself lends itself to having a higher conversion rate.
So how do I word it? Have you stuck strictly with a one-step close in your platform selling, or have you ever done a two-step close where you take the audience that is interested in what you talked about into a separate meeting room after the main talk and answer questions and all that? One or two-step approach work best for you if you've done both?
I have done both. And look, if it happens to be a longer presentation, so for example, it might be a half day or it might be a full day presentation, there's no need to break out into a two-step sell, because you've spent enough time with them for those people to recognize whether you're real or you're not. But if it happens to be just a 45-minute presentation or a 1-hour presentation, yes, you'll invite people to actually come to another event, whether it's that same day, straight after the function, or another day, and spend some more time with them, because Brett, probably better than most, people need to, the old adage is, know you, like you, and trust you before they hand their money over, and that's fair enough. Again, because of because of the nature of the pitching from stage speaking circuit. Um, yeah, business owners tend to be a little skeptical of speakers when they're selling something. So the more time they spend with you, the more likely that you will have a higher conversion.
So what is working these days, John, in terms of price point for what's selling from the stage? And are the offers strictly digital these days, or anybody still doing physical products at all as their offer?
Pretty much all digital. Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I've got a few wrinkles around the eyes, so therefore I've been around since Fred Flintstone used to chisel that message on the rock. And yeah, look, pretty much it's all digital these days. And why wouldn't it be? Because my advertising business, it's called the Institute of Wow.com now. But I've had a couple of advertising businesses in previous lives, and we did a lot of TV commercials and a lot of radio commercials and a lot of press advertisements. But seriously, when you look at TV or radio these days, it really is only built for the big boys because the wastage is enormous. Now, if you've got a business and you're advertising on television, there's a good chance that 90% of that audience will not be your audience. It's just the way it is. Whereas, Facebook, of course, and platforms like that are the most laser targeted form of advertising the world's ever seen. And you can really zero in geodemographically on your audience. And so pretty much all of our clients now would be, I'd say 80% of their advertising budget would be directed towards digital advertising.
So when you are selling from the stage, John, and the product offering is a digital product, how do you address the issue of providing some type of instant gratification? If somebody's putting down a couple $1,000s or $5,000 or whatever it may be for a high-end ticket offer from the stage, I've seen from my experience managing the back sales table events that if there's not something immediate that they receive, there's a bit of a disconnect because it's like I paid $5,000 for a password and a website URL. I mean, how do you address that instant gratification in that scenario, if at all?
Yeah, no, I do. And Brett, again, because of the skepticism of seminar speakers, and the fact that if you go to many of these events that a seminar speaker is presenting at, you never get to speak to him or her. Okay, you just never ever. If you're in the audience and you buy that program, you will get to speak to one of their apprentices. You just won't get to speak to the top dog. And in my instance, I make sure that we provide them with an assurance that they will get to speak with me. So therefore, if we sign them up to a 12-month program, and it might be, $997 a month, I'll make sure that they get to speak to me. We have a program where basically we call it the 1 hour marketing plan. And what happens there is that they join a program for $997 a month, which is quite modest compared to a lot of the others. So I end up with 12 times $997, but they get to talk with me every single week. So therefore what happens is that once a week we have an hour, if you like, mastermind style call. And we make sure that there's never more than 20 people on that call. If we have more than that in terms of clientele, I just do 2 calls a week or 3 calls a week. But in that mastermind environment, every single week they get to talk to me. And that's a big difference from a lot of people who just sell the digital product and run away.
Now, obviously, storytelling is critically important to the success of any speaker. So I got to ask you to tell your Jerry Seinfeld story just because people are going to be interested to hear it. So tell us your Jerry Seinfeld story.
I have milked the daylights out of that, Brett.
Yes, you have.
Yes, I have. Yes, look, I had a client here in Australia some years ago, which was a bank. They're actually a building society, but let's call it a bank. And they were called the Greater Building Society. And they engaged my services to have a look at their business. And they really wanted to beef up their home loans. They wanted to sell more home loans. And when I did a time and motion study on their business and realized that they were just the same as every other bank, give or take a couple of points, in interest rates, they were pretty much the same as all the other banks. And I said to them, look, you're a challenger brand. And they said, what do you mean? I said, look, you're the 250th biggest business in Australia, but you're very small compared to the big Wells Fargo style banks here in Australia. And they said, okay, smart Alex, so what do we do to get more home loans? And I said, well, you're selling home loans on price. Basically, you say 6.2% and the big banks will be 6.1 1% within 24 hours. So why do you try and take them on? It'd be like a corner store trying to take Costco or Walmart on, you know. And they said, right, well, what should we do? I said, look, I'm doing some TV commercials at the moment for a travel wholesaler. Why don't we do this? Why don't we actually stop giving people the honeymoon rate? Because even now, today, that's what banks do. They give people a 1% break for the first year, and then the interest rate goes up after the second year. So therefore, for example, on the first year, if they've taken out a loan for $500,000, then they give them a 1% rate, discount on the interest rate at that time. So I said, pick up 1% and give it to the travel company that I can introduce you to, and they'll give you a $5,000 holiday for $2,500. So why don't we do this? We stop advertising on price, and what we do is that we value add. So we say, come and get a home loan from the Greater Building Society, and you get a free vacation. And the thing went nuts, Brett. In the first few years, they took an extra $15 billion, not million, but $1 billion worth of home loans. Now, Australia population is California's population. So that is big deal to take $15 billion worth of extra home loans. And all of a sudden, I got hero status, of course. This idea just went nuts. So we put it on TV and put it on online. And around about 4 or 5 years into the promotion, we took it up another level. And I got Jerry Seinfeld to do the advertising. And how I got it was I just simply annoyed the daylights out of his manager, a guy called George Shapiro, who is in LA. And if you look at the TV show at the very end, you'll see that the credits say that this show was produced by Shapiro West. And they were two guys that basically, created the Seinfeld show, George Shapiro and Howard West. So I annoyed him and annoyed him and annoyed him. And eventually, after a few months, he said to me, listen, I'll ask Jerry, what has Jerry got to do? And I said, all he's got to do is just basically be himself and be sarcastic about other banks, and obviously, play up the fact that you get a free vacation with the Greater. And as it turned out, after 6 months of hammering George Shapiro, I got a call to say, yep, he'll do it. And we paid Jerry at the time a very modest fee for a celebrity of his level. It was about $1.1 million a year multiplied by 3 years. So it was a 3-year contract. And all he had to do was just work for a couple of days each year, of course. So therefore, it was pretty easy for him. But I asked Jerry when I went over to make these commercials in New York with him for 3 years in a row, I said to him, you've got more money than God. Why would you accept this? I mean, it's not about the money, surely. And he said, well, my name is John Dwyer, but I get JD. He said, well, JD, the reason I did it was, number one, I enjoy Australians' sense of humor because you guys are pretty sarcastic. And you asked me to take the piss out of the banks. I take the piss for a living, right? And he said, number two, I thought if I didn't say yes, you would never go away. So I said to him, well, persistence beats intelligence.
All right. So, that's a fantastic story. So, in your mind, JD, what makes for a good story? What should a speaker consider when they're trying to decide what stories to incorporate into their talks?
And look, I'm preaching from the hymn book because most good speakers understand this, but there's, in the world of speaking, everyone, if they have a comeback story, should highlight it. And if you look at all the most successful movies around the world, everything that Spielberg does, normally it's boy finds girl, loses girl, gets girl back again. Or, child loses dog, child gets dog, loses dog, gets dog back again before the end of the movie. And Lassie was built on that. And so therefore, pretty much all of us, and I'm sure, Brett, you'd be the same. I've had a roller coaster ride. This entrepreneurial sort of path that I've taken has, sort of had its ups and downs. It certainly is not the merry-go-round, it's the roller coaster. So I've made it and lost it. And I'm sure most people who are entrepreneurs have probably got a similar story. And I think it's very important that if you do, to show that real side of you. And instead of showing the castles and the yachts and all of the BS that goes with that, and a lot of speakers do that, what I find is the best way to, I guess, probably be relevant to the people in the audience because they've had the same roller coaster, is to just tell your comeback story. And aside from the fact that I think it's the nice, right thing to do, it's also very appealing because everyone loves a comeback.
All right. So, as a platform seller, give me real quickly maybe your 3 biggest tips for being successful as a platform seller.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I wish this was like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire where you could ring a friend. But I guess just off the top of my head, number one, as I mentioned already, you just be real, just be down to earth and real. Don't put on those silly slides that show you with, bundles of money around you, because that's just silly. Nobody believes it. And I think number two is to what we call message to market match. Make sure that the message that you have is reaching the market who's in the room. So, for example, if I, had hair salon owners in the room, I would make sure that my presentation was built around their industry instead of just rolling out the same show for everyone. And I guess the third thing is that a strong CTA, and you know what that means, but call to action, a very strong call to action. Because I have to say that before I woke up to myself, I completely died on a couple of occasions in my early days with speaking, because I didn't have a strong call to action. I just basically, at the end of the presentation, when they all were, you could see they were very interested in what I had to provide, but I just sort of stupidly would say to them, well, if you're interested in, doing something with me, then come and see me after the event. Well, no, that just doesn't cut it. You've got to be very clear about your call to action.
All right, JD, I have a couple other questions I'm going to ask you, but before we do, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie.
And we are back with the Spotlight on the Speaking Show, and my guest, John Dwyer, JD. So this is one of my favorite questions to ask my guests always is, but tell me an embarrassing thing that happened in your speaking career that left you a little bit red-faced at the time, but there was a valuable lesson learned and something you would highly advise aspiring speakers not to do.
Brett, I have to point out to you at this moment, I'm a complete idiot. Okay, so I am a moron with a capital M in lots and lots of ways. And this particular instance, I won the Academy Award. I won the gold medal for being a fool. I had my microphone on, and in one of the breaks, I went to the restroom, and I left the microphone on. And yeah, you can imagine what the crowd in the room next door to the restroom were hearing. So when I came back into the room, I had a standing ovation. And because I'm rather sarcastic and a bit cheeky, then everyone in the room reckoned I deserved it. I deserved to be embarrassed.
Well, I guess that's one way to get a standing ovation, but not
Yes.
the way you would desire to get it. So,
No.
all right. So let's talk about the Institute of Wow a little bit, John, because you help marketers, and let's focus on speakers. So how can speakers employ some of the things that have worked well for you across various industries into their speaking marketing mix?
Yeah, okay. Look, the Institute of Wow.com is my business, and I came from the corporate world. So therefore, up until a dozen or so years ago, my clients down under were people like the Disney company, 7-Eleven, Rupert Murdoch's, News Limited, or Fox he's known as, and BP gas stations and bigger businesses like that. And about a dozen years ago, I said to my wife, look, we're not getting any younger. Why don't I use the IP of the ideas that I had for these bigger businesses and make it suitable for smaller businesses? In other words, cut it up into bite-sized pieces and make it available for smaller businesses. And when I hit the road and got into the seminar circuit, I saw lots and lots and lots of speakers. And I know that a lot of your audience are speakers. And what I found when I looked at a lot of these speakers is that they were excellent on stage, but they just didn't know how to get enough gigs. And if you're a speaker and that's how you make your money, then of course the only way you're going to make money is to get gigs. And I found that, really the way that I could get, obviously I milked the Seinfeld thing, come and listen to the marketing expert who Jerry Seinfeld trusted with his last campaign. So obviously I had that I could hang my flag on. But by the same token, many of these speakers that I bumped into were, I won't say they were starving, but they were certainly not getting enough gigs. And anyway, a lot of them said to me, look, how can you use this wow factor marketing, that you've got to help us get more gigs? And essentially, I just said to them, aside from the normal networking, which, everyone does, I just said to them, look, why don't you actually hold, and those days it was Skype, these days it's Zoom, but why don't you hold Skype meetings for event organisers and also for businesses that have conventions, and mainly for businesses that have conventions. Because the speaking agencies, as you know, they'll give the gigs to a celebrity or a sports star before just an ordinary speaker. And that's what I did. I mean, I basically, did that. I effectively held Skype meetings, and it would be Zoom now, but Skype meetings for the marketing manager or the CEO of businesses in certain industries. So it might be the solar industry, it could be the furniture retail industry, it could be butchers, bakers, candlestick makers. And by actually having communications with them and finding out when they had their big convention on, guess what? I got booked for speaking at those conventions. And the good part about it is that you are then not having to fill a room, because you know that if you're a speaker and you have to fill the room, you've got to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on Facebook, and then you've got to spend another $5,000 or $10,000 on the hotel.
So I want to circle back around to my question, and that is, as a speaker, how can I employ possibly incentive-based marketing into trying to land more speaking gigs possibly?
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. What I do these days is what Oprah Winfrey did when she gave away all of the motor cars. We have an association with a travel company. What happened is that, and if you don't mind, Brett, I'll just make this as quick as I possibly can, but it's how I really, sort of, I guess, stand out in my little pond. When the Seinfeld campaign hit, where Jerry was on TV in Australia all the time saying, get a home loan from this particular bank and you get a free vacation, about 6 months out from COVID, I got contacted by an international travel company who said, look, we've seen your Seinfeld stuff. It's pretty hard to keep that a secret. You seem to have a pretty good handle on this marketing stuff. We're a travel company and we get access to unsold hotel rooms around the world. And so therefore Las Vegas, New York, Orlando, Europe, Australia, Bali. And I said, yeah, go on. And they said, well, we're a travel company, but we're not a marketing company. So you seem to have the marketing edge. How about you put together, let's call it a Happy Meal toy incentive for businesses to use to attract customers, and we'll just charge you a royalty fee, like a Disney royalty fee when you take out products off Disney. And I said, yeah, okay, let's do that. So I put together a product, and it was based on this thing here. Essentially what we do is that we provide to businesses a voucher like that allows people to travel, allows people to stay at hotels all around the world for free. And so what I do is that when I'm actually in presentation mode, whether it be in a convention or a seminar of my own, I actually will promote the fact that this here can make a huge difference to someone's business, because instead of just selling a refrigerator, now they're selling a refrigerator with a free Happy Meal toy, which is a 3-night vacation. So what I say to speakers is that they should consider doing something with their products like I do, because what I will do is that I will sing the praises of this incentive-based promotion to my audience. And then what I'll do is I'll say, would someone like to win one of these vacations? And they come up and I give them a test. I say, who is the president of America? Is it Fred Nurks, Bill Smith, or is it Joe Biden? And of course, they get the answer right. I go, well, here it is. You've just won a 3-night vacation on me. Everyone in the crowd, please give Jim a round of applause. And then I say, does everyone in the room now understand how exciting this promotion could be? And they go, yep. I go, okay. Well, guess what? You've got a vacation. You've got a vacation. You've got a vacation. And I go nuts like Oprah did with you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. And then I say to them, do you realize that you're excited? The room goes nuts. And I said, do you realize how excited you are now because every one of you have just got a vacation? Can you imagine what that would be if it was your business? And of course, they then realize, wow, this is some incentive. Because by the way, I give this to them for less than $50 and it's worth $1,000. So therefore, it's a pretty good Happy Meal toy. That gets them off their seat and gets them really warmed up to my presentation and what I'm going to offer at the end of the presentation. So I would suggest to any speaker is that if you are pitching at the end of your presentation, give them for free a taste of what you're going to sell. Now, whether that happens to be a digital product or in this instance, I guess it is digital. We print these and give it to them, but when they book their vacation, of course, they go online. It's a digital product. But if you can give them a taste test in that sort of Oprah Winfrey sort of wild offer, you just watch it. Just what happens to your sales is amazing. I mean, we had one recently. I was speaking to golf shop owners, so people who own the golf shop on golf courses. We had 92 people in the room, and I was selling these vouchers in a packet of 30, I think it was, and it was 30 of these that they could buy for $97. So that's 30 times 97, so it's just $2,900. Out of the 92, we had a 41% close rate, which is a pretty good hour's work, yeah. But it was because I did the Oprah Winfrey thing and convinced them of how exciting this would be for them to give it to their customers, and then they understood the power.
All right, so we were talking before the show, John, about this manifesto that you've created, and you've graciously offered to make it available to our listeners. So tell people a little bit more about what it is and how they can get a hold of that.
Sure. Okie dokie. When I hit the seminar circuit, was asked to write a book, and because I'm a bit of a show off, and because talk about hypocritical, Brett. I was talking about speakers being show offs before. I mean, fancy me saying that. So anyway, I decided that I would write a book that would be a little bit bigger than the normal book. So this is what it looks like. And I know if anyone's listening to this audio, they won't understand it, but the book is the size of a tabloid newspaper, and it's called the Wow Manifesto. And in this book are if you like, the most successful direct response marketing ideas that I've had over the last 20 years. They're all basically timeless. It doesn't matter whether it was pre the digital age or not. All of these ideas are pretty much timeless. And so in this book, which is 298 pages, there's promotion after promotion after promotional idea. And this book, if I was to print it, comes in at $420 to print. So I'm not going to give your viewers or listeners the $420 book, but I will give them the digital version of this. And so I think, whether you're a speaker or you come from another industry, you'll find this is a pretty good coffee table reference, if you like, when you're looking for ideas to promote your speaking career or to promote your product. It's called the Wow Manifesto. And I think you can put it in the show notes, Brett, but the actual link is wowmanifesto.com/free. So wowmanifesto.com with the /free, and that'll come to you instantly.
All right. Well, definitely we'll make sure that appears in the show notes below. And where else can they get a hold of you or find out more about you, John, if they want to get involved in your world?
Just check any police records in Australia. You'll find them on most of them.
Top of the list?
It's such a dad joke, isn't it? I apologize. If you've got any millennials that were listening, they're gone now. Okay. My 6 millennials, one of them came to one of my seminars recently because he's 25 and he's never been to one of my things before. I think they just thought that the 6 kids that I've got, that basically they're all grown up, of course, now with their own children. I think that they had no idea what I did for a living. They must have thought there was a money tree in the backyard. But anyway, he came to one of my events, and at the end of it, he said, "Dad, your stuff's pretty good." I said, "Oh, thank you very much after all these years." He said, "Oh, but," and I knew there was going to be a but, and I said, "What's that?" He said, "I'd stop the dad jokes. You're just not funny." So anyway, so I'm sorry for the dad joke. Yes, look, at my personal email address, I'm more than happy to give that out. It's john@theinstituteofwow.com. So that's john@theinstituteofwow.com. And our website with all sorts of stuff in there is theinstituteofwow.com.
All right, outstanding. So any final words of wisdom, JD, for the aspiring speaker out there before we wrap up this episode?
Look, I get asked this question quite a bit, Brett, and the only thing I would probably say is 2 pieces of advice that I give my kids. I don't know that they listen to me, by the way. It's funny, they listen to me once they have a mortgage. As soon as they've got a mortgage, "Hey, Dad, have you got any ideas how we can have a side hustle and make more money?" Up until then, I'm just the money tree. Yeah. Probably 2 things. And number one, try and be what I call the of your industry. So, be unlike all of your competitors, or be unusual, or be unconventional. And the only reason I come up with a little cute phrase, be the is because it's pretty easy to remember. Just try and be the don't be like the guys down the road. If you're in a Me Too industry, and most of us are, so if you're selling your speaking services. Really at the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there competing against you. Try and make sure that you create a wow factor that, I guess, sort of brands you as the aunt of the industry. And of course, the other one is, and Brett, you've heard this a million times from other people, so it's not something that I've come up with, but that is that, hang around with people who say, why not people who say why, because the mistake I made in the early part of my career is that, I was an ideas person and pretty much always have been. Not always successful ideas, but nonetheless an ideas person. And I was silly enough to hang around with a few people who would always say, oh, but why? But why would we do that? And why would we do this? And then, about 15, 20 years ago, I woke up to myself and I started to hang around crazy people who would go, yeah, why not? Why not? So, my advice would be hang around with the why nots.
All right. I think that's great advice. So, John, I want to thank you so much for being my guest on this episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show. I wish you the greatest of success in all that you do. And to all the listeners out there, thank you for joining us this week. And as always, I wish you the greatest of success. And may this year be your greatest year yet. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brett.
This has been the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway. Be sure to join us every week as we interview speaking industry pros and have them share their best tips for building a profitable speaking business. Until next week, thank you for tuning in, and remember to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com so you can enjoy even more great episodes like this one. While you're here, be sure to subscribe via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Spotlight on Speaking show. Until then, our sincere best wishes to you for the greatest of success as you work to build your own profitable speaking business.